Over the past few days, several people have been reporting mysterious objects in the sky. Most of these appear in a line and consist of over 10 glowing objects. At first, several photographs made their way online, with people confused about what they'd captured on camera. At first, some suggested that what was being captured were unidentified flying objects, or could have been linked to the military. These large objects have been captured from all around the world. The answer for what these objects are, though, were announced shortly after these images made their way online. Turns out that SpaceX launched their Starlink mission. SpaceX said the following on their website. Going back on the 18th of March at 8:16 a.m., we launched the 6th launch of Starlink satellites. Falcon 9 lifted off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The Starlink satellites will deploy in an elliptical orbit approximately 15 minutes after liftoff. Prior to orbit range, SpaceX engineers will conduct data reviews to ensure all Starlink satellites are operating as intended. Once the checkouts are completed, the satellites will then use their onboard iron thrusters to move into their intended orbits and operational altitude of 550 kilometers. SpaceX is leveraging its experience in building rockets and spacecraft to deploy the world's most advanced broadband internet system, with a performance that far surpasses that of a traditional satellite internet and a global network unbounded by ground infrastructure limitations. Starlink will deliver high-speed broadband internet to locations where access has been unreliable, expensive, or completely unavailable. Each Starlink satellite weighs approximately 260 kilograms and features a compact flat design that minimizes volume, allowing for a dense launch stack to take full advantage of Falcon 9's launch capabilities. With 4 powerful phased array and 2 parabolic antennas on each satellite, an enormous amount of throughput can be placed and redirected in a short time for an order of magnitude lower cost than traditional satellite-based internet. This news comes shortly after the Federal Communications Commission granted SpaceX a license for the global broadband internet service. Elon Musk described the objects as looking like flat UFOs. SpaceX have reported that around 360 satellites have been sent into low orbit so far, but that they still want to send up thousands more. There has been some controversy about this mission, with some saying they've taken up the night sky and ruining the views. With one person saying the following, "Who approved these? I'm an astrophotographer and it's messed up some of my pictures. I've seen them a few times already and they're ugly. If more of these are going up, will we see them constantly?" As of right now, SpaceX has said they want there to be over 42,000 of these satellites in the sky. So you can see why people are concerned about them taking up the night sky. Another astrophotographer said the following, "I tried to stack my images, but the satellites got in the way and completely ruined them. It's annoying as this is my downtime and these satellites are getting in the way. So what do you make of these? And do you think they should be putting 42,000 of them in low orbit?" One of the most intriguing UFO reports comes from Canada. It details an encounter Stephen Michalak had with an unidentified flying object, and it's used by researchers to suggest that these crafts are interested in our planet along with the people that live on it. The story begins in 1967 at Falcon Lake, which can be found in Canada. At the time, Stephen was trying his luck at digging some minerals. After being out there for a while, he did find a nice piece of quartz. However, shortly after this, an event would unfold that would change his life forever. He could see in the distance a bizarre-looking object. He described it as looking like an oval object and having a reddish glow around it. He hadn't seen anything in the era prior and noted that it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. As he was observing the craft, he noted it began to change shape, transforming into the dish-shaped crafts that are usually reported around the world. The mysterious craft seemed to have been intrigued by Stephen being there, as it soon made its way towards him. It was estimated the glowing craft landed around 40 to 50 meters away from him. As some were doing this situation, he was curious about what had landed, and so made his way towards the object. As he got closer to it, he reported there was a strong smell of sulfur, and that he could hear a very quiet humming sound coming from the object itself. Intrigued by this, he then began to step even closer. This is when he heard what appeared to be voices coming from within. Stephen then asked several questions, but he didn't get a reply. He then made his way to what looked like an opening on the object. This is when things started to go badly wrong. He was then hit with a very powerful jet stream that burned his chest. The craft then started to hover above the man before making a quick exit from the area. After being hit with the mysterious heat ray, Michalak reported feeling very unwell. The air of his chest that got hit started to feel like it was on fire, and every time he stood up it felt as though he was going to be sick. He was then able to make it to the Falcon Motor Hotel, where the staff couldn't understand what had just happened. Due to him vomiting and mumbling about the events that just unfolded, they thought he was drunk. He was soon taken to the hospital where a mysterious grid-like pattern could be seen on his chest. This was the evidence that something had struck his chest, and with enough force to be able to leave these deep marks. His vomiting was reported to have been down to radiation poisoning. Once he was feeling better, he was able to come forward in detail what had happened. Interestingly, shortly after being released from the hospital, the military were reportedly very interested in what had happened. What's so bizarre about this case is that in the following years, the hospital that treated him denied it happened. But Stefan had documents to prove that he had been treated by them on that night. So what do you make of this interesting case? And what do you think he encountered on that night? In 2002, Elon Musk founded SpaceX to make more affordable rockets. His first two rockets were the Falcon 1 and the larger Falcon 9, which were designed to cost much less than competing rockets. A third rocket, the Falcon Heavy, which was scheduled for launch in 2017, which was designed to carry 53,000 kilograms to orbit, nearly twice that of its largest competitor, the Boeing company's Delta IV Heavy, and it did this at 1/3 the cost. SpaceX also developed the Dragon spacecraft, which carries supplies to the International Space Station, and is designed to carry as many as 7 astronauts. Back on the 18th of March 2020, SpaceX launched its 6th Starlink mission. SpaceX said the following on their website. Falcon 9 lifted off from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Falcon 9's first stage previously supported the Iridium 7 Next mission in July 2018, the Sycon 1A mission in October 2018, the Nusantara Saturn mission in February 2019, and the second launch of Starlink in November 2019. Falcon 9's fairing previously supported the first launch of Starlink in May 2019. However, it was during this Starlink mission that people reported seeing something strange. It was captured during the original SpaceX livestream video. If you reported, there were several of these objects on the live cam, and it seemed as if they were observing the rocket, with one person saying the following. It looked as though these objects were following the rocket. I saw a few of them on screen and couldn't explain what they were. The objects were black in color and had an oval shape. They could be seen flying past at a very high speed. Others have said that it's not uncommon to see these types of objects while in space. Various people on board the International Space Station have reported seeing similar graphs, saying that they zoom past the station, but in some cases they do change direction and disappear within seconds. Others, however, have suggested that the objects could have been from the rocket itself, whereas some said it could have been a piece of space debris that just so happened to show up on the livecam. After all, NASA have said the space above our planet is littered with debris. A study in 2013 said there's over 170 million bits of debris outside of our Earth that's smaller than 1 centimeter. There's over 670,000 pieces of debris between 1 and 10 centimeters, and around 29,000 larger pieces were estimated to be in orbit around our planet. As of right now, Elon Musk has said that he's not stopping anytime soon. SpaceX has plans to land on the Red Planet. He is currently working with experts and astrophysicists that are in the process of devising new ways to replenish the Martian atmosphere. Not only that, but they also plan to repair the planet's ecosystem to make it sustainable for human life. They hope to have achieved this by 2030. If this fails, NASA have said they're also looking at putting people on the Red Planet, saying they hope to do this by 2030. It's interesting to think that within many of our lifetimes we'll be seeing humans walking on the Red Planet. And so what do you guys make of these objects that were seen on the SpaceX live cams? Do you think they're unexplained or have a more earthly origin? Over the years, some interesting things have been detected by the Solon Heliospheric Observatory. 12th of April, It was reported that something massive exploded on the far side of the sun. Interestingly, people who watched the sun have said that this isn't the first time this has happened. They pointed out that similar events have happened on the 14th of April, only 2 days later. The event was described as a massive blast explosion. These were captured on NASA's stereo apron. One question that was put forward is, why did these two massive events happen so close to one another? Another idea is that these were caused by natural events. The first theory that was put forward was that this event was caused by a particularly large solar flare. Our sun is a giant star that can be found at the heart of our solar system. If we didn't have the sun's massive amount of energy, there would be no life on our planet. Scientists have figured out the sun is around 110 times the diameter of Earth. This means that over 1 billion Earths could fit inside the sun. This tells us then this event that happened on the sun was much bigger than our planet, showcasing just how fragile our blue marble is. The outside of the sun is over 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. However, that's nothing compared to the core, which can reach more than 27 million degrees. NASA have said that to match the energy the sun produces, you'd have to set off around 100 billion tons of dynamite every second. Solar storms in the Earth's upper atmosphere are triggered by massive amounts of energy from the sun. If one of these storms is particularly powerful, it will take out entire power networks across our planet. What's worrying about this is researchers have said we're not ready for an event like this, and that it would cause chaos across the entire planet. Experts estimate if a large enough solar event was to strike our planet, it would cause over 2.3 trillion pounds of $3 trillion worth in damage. The micronation of Asgardia has come forward and said the following. They pose a serious threat to Earth even without the technological infrastructure of the modern age. The growth of highly sensitive and space-dependent electronic grids. Signals and networks makes the task of defending this planet from the unpredictable events of the sun more urgent than ever. Asgardia is committed as a community of citizens of more than 200 countries to invest in public and scientific affairs, to researching and preparing appropriate defense mechanisms to tackle superstorms, and caring equally about all humanity as well as the citizens. Asgardia, or the Space Kingdom of Asgardia, intends to build free settlements in outer space. However, they have warned us about these outside attacks. Going back, scientists announced that a massive solar storm hit our planet. It's thought this occurred around 2,500 to 2,700 years ago, and it's believed to have been 10 times stronger than any solar storm we've experienced in the modern day. According to researchers, these solar storms did used to happen quite often. In fact, it's due to our magnetosphere that we're kept safe. This protects all life on Earth from most of the particles the sun emits. Going back thousands of years ago, when this massive solar storm hit our planet, it would have caused radiation issues. Researchers have said it's important we monitor our sun and try to adapt to counter these types of storms. So what do you make of these large explosions observed at our sun? Developed as part of the European Space Agency and NASA's HELO Viewer project, the Solar Heliospheric Observatory allows anyone to view its entire library. Over the years, it's provided some incredible photographs of the sun. However, some people have noticed large anomalies near our sun. One of the most interesting ones is this photograph allegedly showing a cigar-shaped object. Interestingly, some compared this to Oumuamua, which was the first known interstellar object that was detected traveling through our solar system. Going back on the 19th of October 2017, astronomers in the scientific world were amazed when they noticed an object traveling through our solar system. The object in question had come from another solar system, and it was quickly given the name of Oumuamua. What stood out about this object, though, was it seemingly appeared out of nowhere, which in turn caused many to ask questions. When the researchers were able to lock on the object, they could see it traveling around the sun and then shooting away. After this, it was not to return. Astronomers were able to record data on the object for a short period of time. After looking at the data, it turned out that Oumuamua was in our solar system for over a century. The reason Oumuamua wasn't spotted sooner is because it wasn't close enough to reflect enough light for astronomers to pick it up. This recent photograph has caused some to speculate whether this and Oumuamua are the same thing, suggesting that these mysterious interstellar objects are scattered throughout our solar system. Others went down a different route for explaining what the object could be, suggesting that it could be an unidentified flying object. Interestingly, they point to similar-looking crafts that have been photographed here on our planet, and upon comparing them there is a striking similarity. This image was captured by someone using the HelioViewer. This allows you to explore the Sun. The program was developed as part of the European Space Agency and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. As stated on the NASA website, it provides a program that enables users to call up images of the Sun from the past 15 years. More than 1 million images from SOHO can already be accessed. And new images from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory are being added every day. When this photograph was discovered, it soon made the rounds online, with various people putting forward different theories to try and explain the object. One person said the following: "I think this could be a genuine UFO. I have seen similar-looking cigar-shaped crafts and have no idea what they are." However, another person had another take on the photos. They said the cigar-shaped object was put there by NASA to try and hide something behind it. They say this has been seen many times with things such as the moon and Mars photos. The man claimed there must be something interesting behind the image in order for them to have covered his hump. As of right now, NASA has said this is just an anomaly, further saying the following: "Although they may seem pesky, these artifacts and anomalies are normal. They remind us that images, like any other form of data, don't speak for themselves. What we see is a product of both nature and the instruments we use to observe it." What do you make of this photograph? Apollo 11 is perhaps one of man's greatest achievements. For eons, ancient humans would have looked up at the sky and wondered about the incredible sights staring back at them. Fast forward thousands of years later, and various space agencies were battling it out to be the first in space. The first unmanned mission to the moon was in 1959 by the Soviet lunar program, with the first manned landing being Apollo 11 in 1969. The primary objective of Apollo 11 was to complete a national goal set by President John F. Kennedy on the 25th of May, 1961, that was to perform a crewed lunar landing and return to Earth. Additional flight objectives included scientific exploration of the lunar module, deployment of a television camera to transmit signals to Earth, and deployment of a solar wind composition experiment and seismic experiment package. American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans ever to land on the moon. Around 6.5 hours later, Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. As he took his first steps, Armstrong famously said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Armstrong and Aldrin spent 21 hours 36 minutes on the moon's surface. So with all this proof and photographic evidence, where does Stanley Kubrick come into this? There's a few groups that believe he was actually involved in the moon landings, and this has caused various theories to be put forward. It's known that he had connections with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and all this has done is help these theories thrive over the years. The theory is that he actually helped NASA fake the landings, and because they were so impressed with how realistic his films were, they actually kept him on board. One of the reasons this theory gained traction is because of this photograph. It shows Frederick Aldway, who was a NASA advisor, Donald Slayton, a NASA astronaut, Stanley Kubrick, and George Mueller, who was at the time a senior administrator. This caused some to speculate that Stanley would often meet with NASA officials, and this was because they were very impressed with his skills as a director. This only led to theories being put forward that NASA brought him on board to help with various projects. With that being said, not everyone is convinced with the idea that he helped NASA. Some have pointed out, though, the date is tough to pinpoint, and that all this photo shows is Stanley Kubrick with George Mueller. It doesn't prove anything more than that. It's also reported this group was gathered together during the pre-production of 2001, A Space Odyssey. The film took itself seriously and wanted to get as hands-on as possible. This meant that the people working on the film met with various aerospace companies and even NASA themselves. This was to ensure that the film would be realistic and a believable version of what spaceflight is actually like. Others have also said there would be no point in doing this, because when technology increases there would be a point when all the lies would unfold. So what do you make of this theory? NASA are responsible for capturing some incredible science. The cosmos is littered with an unending amount of breathtaking views. However, every so often NASA cameras capture some interesting anomalies. One of the most recent ones to emerge is this one that was captured near our sun. The interesting artifact was picked up by the Mauna Loa Solar Observatory, or MLSO for short. One thing to note is that if this object is genuine, then it's massive. Some amateur researchers that worked out the scale of it suggested that it's easily the size of a planet. Further saying that whatever this mysterious object is appears to be very close to the sun. Interestingly, the object was then said to have made a quick exit, with one user saying it was like the object was jumping around the sun. Interestingly, some researchers who have spotted these mysterious objects around our sun have suggested they could be the mysterious planet eggs. NASA have said that this planet is very much real, with them most recently coming forward in saying that it most likely lurks in the outer solar system, where it's been observed having effects on nearby matter. NASA said the following about the planet on their website. Caltech researchers have found mathematical evidence suggesting there may be a planet X deep within the solar system. This hypothetical Neptune-sized planet orbits our sun in a highly elongated orbit far beyond the object, which the researchers have nicknamed Planet 9, could have a mass of around 10 times that of Earth and orbit around 20 times further from the sun on average than Neptune. It may take between 10,000 and 20,000 Earth years to make one full orbiter on the sun. Jim Green, director of NASA's Planetary Science Division, went on to say the following: the possibility of a new planet is certainly an exciting one for me as a planetary scientist, and for all of us. The announcement does not mean there is a new planet in our solar system. The existence of this distant world is only theoretical at this point, and no direct observation of the objects nicknamed Planet 9 have been made. However, even though NASA have come forward and said this, there's some that think this planet can be observed, and that what people are seeing near the sun is not unidentified flying objects, but rather this massive planet making itself known. Astronomers, however, have said this isn't the case, and that these objects that have been seen are just anomalies. They suggested the most likely explanation is that these are processing areas that do appear every so often, further saying they're actually quite common and can be seen on various photographs. Others, however, counter this by saying why do they move around the sun if they're just anomalies, and that if this was the case, why have some of them been docked to the sun for several hours, or seen on live cams only to fly away after they've been there for a while. So what do you make of these mysterious objects being seen around the sun? And what do you think they are? Every year, thousands of people witness UFOs from the ground. Researchers have said that although it's exciting when someone witnesses or captures a UFO, the majority of them can be explained. They usually turn out to be things such as planes, weather balloons, natural phenomena, flares, or military activities. A small percentage of them, however, do remain unexplained. One interesting place where these unidentified flying objects are captured is from plane windows. These are usually much harder to explain as the photograph or video is usually clearer from this viewpoint. This has led to people videoing their plane ride in the hopes of capturing something unexplained. This person managed to photograph something from their plane window. They went on to say the following: I captured this photograph while I was going on holiday to America. A few hours into my flight, I noticed something outside of my window. I've never seen anything like this before. If I had to describe it, I would say it looked like a giant tube. It would keep up with our plane as if it was watching us. It stayed above our plane for several minutes but did keep its distance. I was able to take a few photographs, but this is the one that showed it best. I'm not educated in planes, so for all I know this could be some type of new aircraft or link to the military. However, the people that I've shown this to have said that it looks really weird, and unlike any conventional aircraft they've seen, the eyewitness ended by saying that it was a cool experience, and that she was glad she was able to snap a photograph of it. Interestingly, it's not just passengers that have come forward of their encounters. Pilots have also detailed things they can't initially explain. It's reported that 3 separate pilots were left asking questions when they encountered mysterious lights in the sky. The incident occurred on Friday, the 9th of November in 2018. This was when a British Airways pilot contacted Shannon Air Traffic Control. The first thing the pilot wanted to know was if there was any military planes or exercises in the area. The reason being because she could see objects that were moving really fast, and it didn't look like normal activity that she's seen before. Air Traffic Control said there was no exercises taking place, and whatever was there shouldn't be. It was then reported that 2 other pilots contacted ground control saying they could see multiple objects traveling at high speeds. Air traffic control once again reported there was no military exercises, and that there is nothing showing on either primary or secondary radar. The pilot said the following, "Okay, it was moving so fast. We saw a bright light and then it just disappeared out of very high speed." The pilot said they were not on a collision course of the object, but just wondered what it was. Air traffic control then reported that the 3rd pilot said they were happy they weren't the only ones who saw it. It was reported that the UFO was moving at incredibly fast speeds, around Mach 2. This is 2,500 kilometers per hour and is twice the speed of sound. So what do you make of these interesting stories? And have you ever seen anything strange while on board a plane? Going back in 2018, a witness come forward and detailed their encounter with a mysterious craft. The individual is from Missouri and has a background in photography and also worked at NASA. The witness reported his encounter to MUFON, which stands for the Mutual UFO Network. They're responsible for keeping a record of the hundreds of thousands of UFO sightings that get reported every year. This story can be found on the MUFON database and comes under case number 92483. It's reported that the witness was on American Airlines Flight 3996 from Houston to Chicago. The sighting happened at 2:30 p.m. on June the 1st, 2018. The eyewitness said the following, "About halfway through my flight over Missouri, I was photographing storm anvils to use as a desktop wallpaper. Flight was at around 36,000 to 38,000 feet. After taking 3 pictures in around 10 seconds, the craft suddenly appeared to the east of the flight path at about 50,000 feet from nowhere, as if it was from some kind of Star Trek decloaking scene. 3 seconds later, the craft went ballistic to the south and ascending, so fast that the track was almost imperceptible. It went from stationary to light speed disappearance. Some was worse of our airplane and so was not causing a reflection or spot on the window or lens of a camera phone. The craft had a triangular shape to it and it must have been very large, as I had been watching out the window and observing airlines crossing our flight path for around an hour, so was used to what wing planes look like and how fast they would become visible and then pass out of view. I got used to the shape and look of normal airlines. And this one suddenly appeared in my area that I'd been watching and photographing for the last few minutes. It had no time to have made its way into my field of view at normal speeds of 300 to 500 miles per hour. It just appeared, and after shooting it, I lowered my camera to observe it with my eyes, and it suddenly went like ballistic at an angle which could only be up and reverse of our path. It was there for around 3 seconds and then shot out of the scene in less than a second. It's interesting to note the witness has an aircraft background. He went on to say the following, "I was a small craft pilot in my youth and worked at NASA for many years at JSC in Houston. So have a fairly good experience base with things that fly in what looks materially manifested versus what is ghost imaging or reflective anomalies. I've never seen or heard anything that matches the shape or performance, and I knew many astronauts and test pilots during my tenure at NASA. As with many of these occurrences, it happened so fast that I was lucky to capture anything at all. And the picture is too blurry for me to play with it in Photoshop. So I'm including the raw shoot of my camera unaltered by me in any way. All of this happened in blue skies. A MUFON investigator closed his case as an unknown aero object. So what do you guys make of the photograph and the eyewitness testimony? And have you seen anything like this before? It seems that various online groups and people were mocked when they talked about the mysterious Planet 9. The celestial entity also goes by the name of Nibiru. For the last few decades, the human race has increased its technology. What we thought was once impossible, we're now doing. This can be seen in the recent advancements of robotics and artificial intelligence. However, one thing we're focusing on is space. Interestingly, researchers and scientists have come forward and said they've discovered something massive in our solar system. They've described an object as being large and lurking in the outer reaches past Neptune. Interestingly, although NASA are now coming forward and saying this, allegedly theorists who studied ancient maps and calendars have said that our ancestors were aware of this object thousands of years ago. You may have heard about this planet before, and that's because it's made the news for allegedly being on a crash course with the Earth. This didn't happen, and it painted the whole Nibiru planet as being nothing more than fictitious. but amateur researchers and photographers have said they've captured images of this planet. There seems to be some confusion between groups of people that study this planet, with some saying that every so often you can see the planet from Earth, while others say this is not possible. One man who goes by the name of Dr. Sam said the following: "For the sake of dedicated monitoring and the commitment to keep all followers informed of the latest news about the planet comet, we have an important update. A mysterious visitor has made itself known. It's between the planets Saturn, Mars, and the Moon. Now it's apparently near the start of the Eye of Capricorn, and it's getting closer." Another person said the following: "This is exactly the reason why I keep my camera aimed at the sky. Every so often this planet comes into view, and I think that more people are starting to witness it. NASA have described it as being something larger than that. It's lurking in the far reaches of the solar system." Interestingly, recent studies have shown that whatever this object is, it's actually having an effect on the Kuiper Belt rocks, which can be found close to Neptune. This excited many, as for the past few years there's been theories surrounding whether there was a mysterious planet night. And these recent revelations have proved there is something out there having effect on matter close by. Some astronomers have suggested this planet has around 5 to 6 times the mass of Earth. Planet 9, however, has remained a mystery for many years because of how hard it is to spot. It's slow and tedious work, as researchers currently don't know where to look. The planet will be very faint, and it's one of the reasons behind why it's so tough to pinpoint. Interestingly, researchers have said the secret behind this planet might be in some old records. According to a recent study, scientists have said that NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, also known as TESS, could be the place to look for this information, saying that in its records the satellite may have recorded details of the planet. One of the issues with this, though, is that TESS is used for looking for planets way past our solar system. It does this by looking for and registering dips in the sky. This will tell the astronomers that a planet is orbiting around its star. However, NASA have said there's no way you'd be able to see it from our planet. Others have said that what's most likely being seen is some type of atmospheric phenomena. What you make of these interesting photos? It was reported a few months back that thousands of birds were found in India. The incident occurred on the shore of India's biggest saltwater lake. Over 2,500 birds were found in this region, all of which seem to have suffered the same fate. Rather worryingly, this happened during the same time as other mass bird die-offs. So what's going on? During the months of December 2019 and January and February 2020, various people across the planet have reported that a huge number of birds were found, all of which passed away under mysterious circumstances. It's not known what took the birds' lives, although a variety of different explanations have been put forward. Some suggested that all these cases come down to natural phenomena, saying that these birds likely got hit with something such as hailstones or other atmospheric conditions. However, this doesn't explain the event that unfolded in the UK back in December of 2019. No hailstones or other weather phenomena was recorded in the region. Interestingly, it was reported the amount of bird deaths in India was actually wrong, and instead of there being 2,500 birds, officials said the number was as high as 5,000. Indian authorities started to investigate what had happened, with them saying that different species had become victims to whatever had played out. One official told the BBC the following: "We are still counting the dead birds. They are strewn over the entire area of the lake. Some 20 to 25 birds who are still alive are being treated. At this moment, we suspect there was some level of toxicity in high-level salt in the drinking water. We are also looking at other possibilities, such as viral or bacterial infection." A local birdwatcher, however, came forward and said that they've never seen anything like this in the region and that he thinks there's more to it, further saying that the birds were very distressed by something in the area. As of right now, no one seems to know what's going on with these animals and why birds are being affected the most. Various theories have been put forward, which range from the Earth's magnetic field, a global warming of 5G towers being installed. Interestingly, some people have announced that after these towers had been erected, various types of wildlife in the region has started to act strange. One man said the following about the event: "I live in the UK and I noticed that one of these 5G towers was put up close to my area. Since this has happened, I believe it's had an effect on wildlife and even trees. One side of the tree has blossomed already due to the heat we're getting, but the other half of the tree has died. This is the first year this has happened, and strangely enough it happened when this tower was put there. Something doesn't add up. As of right now, officials and companies who are putting up 5G towers have said this has nothing to do with the towers, and that it doesn't affect wildlife and humans. They continue to say that various tests have been carried out and they're completely safe. So what do you make of these mass die-offs? It seems with the world on hold many interesting events are unfolding. Some residents in Mexico have reported hearing loud noises. Those who have heard it have described them as being loud booms, and that they don't sound like anything they've heard before. One resident close to Morlia said they heard the noise during the early hours of the morning. The woman said it was very loud, but didn't sound like a typical explosion. She said the event happened at 1:15 a.m. on the 6th of April. She wanted to say she heard it once more during the early hours of the morning. Another resident close to Mexico City backed up these claims, saying that they heard the sounds around midnight. The man said the loud booms were high in the sky, and that whatever caused it was large. He said that after the initial boom there was another strange noise that followed. He described it as sounding similar to a loud trumpet. It seems though that not many people reported this event. Only a few others came forward and reported the mysterious noise. Although a lot of people didn't hear it or witness it, others said this isn't the first time an event like this has been reported. All over the world people have reported hearing these mysterious booms, and although a variety of explanations have been put forward, there's still confusion about where the noises are actually coming from. NASA said the following about the apocalyptic noises. We could actually hear the typical strains of symphony and the sound of strange storms coming from our planet, and not an alien spaceship. However, as some have pointed out, the original quote can't be tracked down, and it doesn't appear on the official NASA website. Regardless of whether NASA said it or not, people are not happy with this explanation. With one person saying the following, I have seen many theories regarding the mysterious sounds coming from the sky, and they are all very contradicting to one another. Various people would have us believe these sounds are reoccurring natural phenomena, but if that were true, where is the documentation? Where is the proof this is happening all the time in nature? Not only that, but on other sites and organizations, along with personal statements from citizens. Many would have us believe these noises are due to construction work machinery. If that were true, then the company in control should have made a public statement regarding the noises wreaking havoc around the world. There are no reliable facts or honest information regarding this unusual situation. Interestingly, these mysterious booms were also heard across many towns in the United States. In Pennsylvania, residents had been hearing them for months. It even got to the point where authorities got involved. Authorities asked that those who notice anything odd call the police immediately and not investigate it on their own. The majority of people reported that the sounds happened between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Local police have been receiving reports of the sound since April of 2018. What's odd is that usually when these sort of things happen, it's normally only a handful of people who went as in. But in this case, the numbers go into the thousands. Suggestions for what's causing the noises range from UFOs to secret government crafts to unknown natural phenomena. So what do you make of these mysterious noises being heard across the planet? The search for alien life is never ending. One of the places that's constantly being explored is that of the Red Planet. Going back, Opportunity made an interesting discovery when it made its way into a deep crater known as Endurance. For those unaware, Endurance is an impact crater that was visited by the Opportunity rover from the 2nd of May until December in 2004. Interestingly, this crater showed mission scientists that liquid water didn't just exist on the surface, but that it was here several times for a long period of time. The researchers described the water as flood-like, and that it dried up every so often. Some of these high-quality photographs have allowed researchers to get a detailed look of the Martian surface. Gigapans are giant images with billions of pixels. They are able to show us extremely detailed images. What's most impressive about these is that they come in the form of a single photograph. One interesting photograph was uploaded by a NASA consultant. They said the following: on day 1450, curiosity opened eyes wide and captured the entirety of the huge amount on either side of it. This was as it was heading out of the main complex. This is perhaps the largest and clearest set of images taken within the area. The large one consists of 99 individual frames, the lower 53, for a total of 152 images compiled in this huge, beautiful, and totally anomalous gigapan full of artifacts. You can literally spend days scrutinizing closely and still not see anything within. But one interesting artifact that was picked up on was this. People were quick to question what the rover had photographed, with various people saying the objects look similar to a plant on Earth. This isn't the first time that amateur researchers have claimed there's plant life on Mars. They point to various other photographs that show odd-looking structures coming out of the Martian soil. With the most recent announcement of water being on the planet, it's caused some to suggest that certain areas do support life. Some suggested that the object in question isn't a tree, but could be a reflection from a nearby rock. Perhaps one of the strangest discoveries surrounding that of the Martian planet is the overwhelming evidence that proves that early life on Mars was a near-identical twin to our planet, being completely Earth-like in both its atmosphere, surface, and possibly bacterial life, with many researchers accepting the massive amount of gathered evidence surrounding the planet once holding vast oceans and complex bacterial life. There's also been a general acceptance that perhaps Mars also contains another key piece to the puzzle of having a habitable planet, a large Earth-like atmosphere. Evidence has shown that roughly 450 million years ago, the Martian planet once had a strong electromagnetic field. This was to protect its surface from solar winds, similar to that of Earth. However, for some strange reason, this electromagnetic field disappeared and led to the rich Martian atmosphere completely withering away by solar winds, discharging particles that pushed the planet's atmospheric gases away. There are researchers that have argued a number of reasons as to why this has occurred, with some claiming that large asteroids were the cause of the planet's loss of the electromagnetic field, whereas some believe that Mars naturally lost its field over time as the rotation of the planet slowed down. So what do you make of this interesting photograph of the red planet? And do you think it shows a tree? Over the years, scientists and researchers have uncovered some mysterious items. One place where mysterious discoveries have been made is that of our oceans. Researchers have come forward and said that over 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by our oceans, and that inside every ocean, researchers have made some fascinating discoveries. One of these comes in the form of a mysterious-looking entity. The photographs were captured off the coast of Australia. Due to its appearance, it's caused some people to give it the name of the long stringy thing. Schmidt-Ocean were one of the first to post about the fascinating discovery. Marine biologist Stefan Silbert from Brown University came forward and said the following: the whole thing looks like one animal, but it's many thousands of individuals which form an entity on a higher level. The team behind the discovery included people from Western Australia's museum, Schmidt Ocean Institute, and Scripps Institution of Oceanography. When the photos were published, it caused many to speculate about what it was. These incredible images were picked up using a remotely operated vehicle. Schmidt Ocean said the following on Twitter: the most frequent question so far is how big is it? We don't have an exact size, but the ROV pilot used its lasers to estimate the size. This siphonophore's outer ring measured in at 15 meters or 49 feet in diameter. So that ring alone seems to be approximately 47 meters or 154 feet. Marine biologist Stefan Silbert went on to say the following: in a way, these specialized bodies function as organs. Some move the colony, some feed the colony. Some take care of reproduction. The whole thing looks like one animal, but it's many thousands of individuals which form an entity on a higher level. So it's a really tricky question. And what's a colony? Humans are colonies. We are colonies of single cells. It's discoveries like this that show us how complex the creatures of our oceans are. Another interesting discovery was made back in 2015. A team of scientists and researchers sent down a camera to investigate an underwater volcano. This volcano can be found in the southwest Pacific Ocean close to the Solomon Islands. The scientists described the environment as hostile and a place you wouldn't expect to find life. You can imagine how surprised they were to find large marine creatures in this area. Some of the creatures they noticed was that of hammerhead sharks and silky sharks. They couldn't figure out how these sharks were able to last so long in this type of environment. After all, these sharks are usually found in shallow tropical waters. One of the team members said the following about the discovery. Divers who have gotten close to the outer edge of the volcano have had to back away because of how hot it is or because they were getting mold skin burns from the acid water. These animals are living in what you have to assume is much hotter and much more acidic water, and they're just hanging out. It makes you question what type of extreme environments these animals are adapted to. What sort of changes have they undergone? Are there only certain animals that can withstand it? Researchers will be carrying out more studies in the hopes of understanding how these sharks are able to thrive in this environment. So what do you make of these interesting ocean discoveries? David Paulet is best known for the missing 411 books. These were self-published works that looked into disappearances in national parks. It's an interesting topic to look into. Yearly, around 250,000 people go missing, some of which happen in national parks around our planet. It's reported that thousands of people have gone missing in these regions, and the majority of them are never found, causing various theories to be put forward for what happened to them. Many of these disappearances happen in the United States, but what's so strange about them is their nature and consistency. In nearly all of the accounts, people will disappear from thin air within minutes. Many examples detail how said individual will be in sight to them moments later they vanish. The group will then start shouting the person's name only to hear nothing back. One question that's being put forward is why do so many of these cases follow this theme? How could someone disappear within minutes of being separated from the group? Some of the people were experiencing the outdoors as well, only causing more questions to be asked. Some such hikers even lay out plans of travel, backup phones in case of emergency, and telling family members and friends where their trail will be covering and so on. But when research parties go out to find them, not a single clue left behind as to what could have possibly happened to them seems to surface. So the question that many have asked is, could there be something that's causing all of these disappearances? Could it be that these areas are being preserved by the government to cover up these strange sightings and occurrences? Further evidence can be found when analyzing a surprising number of cases found at the Green Mountain National Park near Glastonbury Mountain and Vermont's Long Trail. In fact, many locals regard the area with a sense of supernatural and paranormal themes, as many of the disappearances appear to happen in a relatively small area, referred to as the Bennington Triangle. The area was provided that name by locals after an unreasonable amount of disappearances began to happen during 1945 to 1950. This involved that of experienced hikers, travelers, campers, and outdoorsmen. Some of these disappearances also seem to have happened while the person was still within 50 yards of their group, but still happened to vanish without a trace. The government, however, has come forward and said they know what's going on. Start off by saying that the disappearances are not so mysterious. They have said that many people visit national parks, and although they are great places to visit, many people underestimate how dangerous they can be. There's various factors you need to think about before heading to these regions, and government and national park officials have said you should always come prepared. The most common thing people pass away from in these regions is that of heat, uneven terrain, cliffs, and sometimes wildlife. They say the majority of people can't be found because of how uneven their land is, further saying that people will often fall into crevices, which are really hard to investigate. They also said that national park disappearances are really low, saying that around 280 million people visit parks each year, with around 110 to 150 people losing their lives. So what do you make of these mysterious disappearances, and what do you think is responsible? One of the most interesting discoveries made in the world of archaeology is that of the elongated skulls. These have caused many discussions over the years, with people putting forward different theories for how they came to be. They were first discovered back in the 1920s, and ever since then various theories have been put forward to try to explain them. Interestingly listed on the FBI's website is that of missing skulls. They have named them the deformed Nazca skulls. Strangely, it doesn't say where they were stolen from. Some said it was strange or someone would steal one of these skulls. One thing they've done is fascinated researchers and scientists for years. Some archaeologists have pointed out that these skulls are much different from modern humans, with some of them having up to 30 to 40% more volume. For years now, Mysteries have centered around these mysterious elongated skulls that were recovered near Paragus within Peru. This was back in 1928, when Peruvian archaeologist Julio Teo visited the Pisco province and discovered more than 300 elongated skulls. They were discovered in what was considered an ancient graveyard on the Paragus Peninsula. The discovery of elongated skulls is not a new one in the realm of archaeology, however, as a number of ancient cultures were known to deform the skulls of newborns. This was as they were young because the skulls could be manipulated more easier. Create an elongated head was to show as a form of higher social status. Such cultures include that of the ancient Mayan civilization, as well as the enigmatic macrocephaly, also known as the longheads. What makes the discovery of the Paragus skulls inherently different, however, is that a 2014 DNA analysis of the recovered skull showed that gathered DNA from the remains contained mutations that supposedly did not match any known human or primate DNA samples ever previously recorded. Although the DNA testing was immediately put into question by the scientific community, the lead researcher stands by the peculiar results and asks for those within the scientific community to confirm his findings and take their own tests to show the validity of his claims. Due to the overall appearance and stories that have emerged from the region, various people have suggested that these beings actually came from the sky, further saying they were an ancient advanced civilization that worked to manipulate the human race during their time. Believers in this theory have said that these beings landed on our planet hundreds of thousands of years ago and slowly started to manipulate early hominids. Further evidence of these claims can allegedly be seen on the skulls themselves. Researchers have said there's a lack of sutures of the skulls, and this is evidence of their alien nature, as even cases of hydrocephaly or other known mutations still possess a variation of the sutures that do not exist within the paracoscums, which researchers say proves them not to be the product of cranial deformation or genetic mutation. Scientists, however, have said this isn't the case, and various civilizations across our planet practice this cranial deformation. As of today, though, these giant skulls are still being discovered. What you make of these interesting skulls? It's no secret that the CIA have an interest in UFOs. A few decades ago, they were not open to admitting this. However, in recent years, various documents have been released to the public, and some of these are of interest. One of these is the following. It's a declassified document that shows two mysterious objects in the sky. It's reminded many of the unidentified flying objects that are commonly witnessed by many worldwide. The craft on the bottom right has reminded many of the triangle UFOs that have been witnessed for decades. For over 40 years, the triangle UFOs caused much debate. It's perhaps one of the most common shaped UFOs that have been seen. These crafts are often reported as being silent and have been seen on a number of occasions just hovering in the sky. Sightings of the triangle UFOs often come in waves, with people seeing dozens at a time. They are also perhaps the most photographed UFO as well, with even news programs covering them. What's most impressive about these crafts is that they've been witnessed hovering motionless in the sky and then suddenly making a high-speed departure. Pilots have said they're faster than any conventional aircraft that's currently in the sky. Some have put forward the theory the triangle UFO is a top-secret government craft, while others have said it's most likely the next step in the stealth series of crafts, hence why they're able to do things that other planes can't. There is still a group of people, though, that think these objects are unexplained. Although we mentioned that sightings come in waves. Incredibly, there's been around 4,000 reports of the triangle UFO since the 1990s in the UK alone. There have also been waves of triangle sightings in Belgium, France, Holland, and Germany. The other object in the photograph appears to be a cigar-shaped object. Again, this is one of the most well-seen and documented UFOs. These cigar-shaped crafts have been witnessed for years, and various explanations have been put forward to try and explain them. Eyewitnesses who have reported them have said they're often seen hovering in one place, before making a quick departure. As of right now, it's not known what they are. Others have said, however, they wouldn't release documents that have top-secret information, further saying these documents only contain a few unidentified flying objects, and that they don't show anything we don't already know. Others agreed and said they're never going to release the secret documents. It wouldn't make sense. The CIA have declassified hundreds of these documents over the years, And as some have pointed out, if these crafts don't exist or can be easily explained, then why is hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on researching and examining these objects? It's questions like these and the thousands of UFOs that have been caught on camera that's led to people believing this subject needs to be taken more seriously. It seems that whatever these objects are, they've managed to grab the attention of the CIA. So what do you make of this photograph? And what's your opinion on unidentified flying objects? It seems that bizarre discoveries are often made when people least expect it. This is what happened to one man who was hiking close to Death Valley National Park. The man said the following about his strange discovery. On March 31st, 2020, I was attempting to hike from Cerro Gordo Ghost Town to the border of the Death Valley National Park. The hike is around 7 miles each way but is extremely steep, and the road was packed with snow. A bobcat had visited the cabin I was staying in the night before and left tracks all over my porch, so I was paying more attention to the various tracks I came across in the snow. I saw a few foxes and coat ties. The hike was so difficult that I didn't make it all the way to Death Valley, but stopped around 5 miles in because I was afraid of the sun going down and being stranded out in the cold. On my way back to Cerro Gordo, I took a slightly different path. Given that it was uphill and I was cold and exhausted, I mainly kept my eyes on the ground right in front of me. I'd say around 3 miles back into my return trip, I saw a number of huge prints. I stepped over them at first, but went back and was in awe of how big the prints were. I started learning more about prints, but this didn't look like anything I'd seen in the books, so I took a few pictures and put a quarter down to give some scale. Something other animal trackers online told me to do to help them identify different prints. Also, you can see my shoe print above to give a better idea of size. After I saw it, I was really concerned and picked up my pace to get back to Cerro Gordo before sunset. I saw the print around 6 p.m. and the sun sets around 7 p.m. I only had 2 miles left, but it was straight uphill and deep as snow. I made it back and started looking online and couldn't find any explanation. Interestingly, this footprint does look eerily similar to the ones discovered by Eric Shipton. Back in 1951, a group of hikers were already making headlines for their attempt to scale Mount Everest. While up here, though, instead of snapping photographs of the breathtaking views, they took photos of what appear to be anatomically correct footprints of a strange humanoid-like creature, living at an incredibly high altitude in the region. The footprints were originally found by Michael Ward. Eric Shipton quickly took high-quality photographs of the prints, while placing down his ice pig next to it to help show the length and width of the incredible find. Many skeptics had argued the authenticity of the footprint, but research analysis have found anatomically correct details so perfect that it would have been impossible to fake. The footprint showed that the big toe of the creature appeared to be the perfect size and volume one would see in a creature of a massive size. The reason behind this is that it would need a toe of this size for adequate balance, and the depth of certain areas of the footprint showed a correct distribution of weight that the hikers would never have been able to accurately reproduce. Today, the photographs are seen as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence of the Yeti, and even helps to shed light into its weight, size, and evolution. What you make of this interesting photo, and have you ever come across a footprint similar to this one? It's easy to forget that our planet is still home to various uncontacted tribes. One of the places they can be found is that of the Amazon. Given the dense jungles of the Amazon, it's believed there's a number of indigenous populations that have yet to make any form of contact with the outside world. This does appear to be a recurring theme with small tribes, however, as many modern-day efforts to preserve a native population are taking to prevent the spread of illnesses, or making any form of contact that could lead to a dangerous response. Researchers believe that there may be more than 100 uncontacted tribes within Peru alone. Evidence of these tribes have been gathered via the use of aerial footage and claims of reported encounters with native tribes all throughout the region. Given the fact that these tribes tend to reside in the most remote and densest parts of the jungles, coupled with modern-day efforts to prevent further deforestation and exploration into different parts of the jungle, contact with these tribes are not expected to occur anytime soon. The origins of many of these tribes have been shrouded in mystery, with a number of strange recorded behaviors that leave many wondering the mental status to their villages. Some are reported as being covered from head to toe in red paint, whereas others claim the tribes have been seen carrying out strange acts. Additionally, such reports are not only held to the Amazonian jungles, as there are many other places in the world that hold a wide number of uncontacted tribes, such as the tribe located in the dense jungles of North Sentinel Island, over 10 reported uncontacted tribes in Pava, and a few sightings of uncontacted tribes located in Paraguay. Recently, however, researchers have announced that an indigenous woman who lives deep within the Amazon has contracted the virus that's currently making its way around the planet. This was reported as being the first case out of the hundreds of tribes that share this region. This was announced by the Health Ministry's Indigenous Health Service. The individual is said to be 20 years old and tested positive for it when she was tested. Sadly, this isn't the only case that's been detected in the region. Health workers have said that at least 4 other cases have appeared in the region. And with these people not having access to top medical teams, there is a worry that it could make its way through the tribes. At this time, this individual is the only person to test positive for it. Brazil holds over 850,000 indigenous people, and researchers have said they've been victims to pretty much every disease that's reached them. This includes the flu, malaria, and smallpox. Sadly, the most recent news is that a young boy has passed away after contracting the virus. The individual is said to be 15 years old and was placed in a hospital over a week ago. He's now passed away from respiratory complications. The Brazilian Health Ministry said in a statement that it's a sad and tough time for these people, and that it's worrying as we don't know what's going to happen next. Researchers have said that tests are trying to be carried out in these regions as much as possible, and this is in the hopes of trying to detect it as early as they can. The universe is a truly massive place. Going back in 2015, Russian astronomers discovered a mysterious signal coming from a star system. This system is only 94 light-years away from our planet. The HD 164595 star system has been described as being a possible candidate for intelligent beings. This excited many people as every year we pick up on mysterious signals in the cosmos. What's interesting about this one, though, is that it's so close to our planet. The Russian team used powerful telescopes to get a closer look at the system. Interestingly, they said it only has one planet, and that it's similar in size to Neptune, which resides in our solar system. The researchers said, however, that it's likely there could be other planets in this region. Paul Gilster said the following: what we know of HD 164595 is that it's a star of 0.99 solar masses at a distance of roughly 95 light-years in the constellation Hercules, and an estimated age of 6.3 billion years. Interestingly, it was reported that it's not impossible that this signal could be from extraterrestrial life, but the researchers warn not to overhype this discovery, and that we don't know all the facts surrounding this signal. Scientists are trying hard to discover evidence of life out there in the vastness of space. The exploration of space is extremely important for our existence. With enough knowledge and technology out there, we could actually travel through space and live on certain planets in the near future. Recently, scientists have come forward and announced that another mysterious radio signal has caught their attention. This is because the signal has made itself known for the 5th year in a row. What's so mysterious about these signals is that we're usually not able to track, but the team behind the study have managed to track the signal to a spiral galaxy. This galaxy in question is said to be 495 to 505 million light-years away from our planet, and that it's most likely linked to the mysterious fast radio bears that have confused researchers for years. One of the astronomers who's been working on the case said the following about the signals. This object's location is radically different from that of not only the previous located but also all previously studied fast radio bears. This blurs the difference between repeating and non-repeating fast radio bears. It may be that FRBs are produced in a large zoo of locations across the universe and just require some specific conditions to be visible. This has caused some people to put forward the idea that these signals have been sent out by other civilizations. Although this sounds like an out-there theory, this is very possible, with scientists even coming forward and saying this can't be ruled out. One of the astronomers said the following: the multiple flashes that we witnessed in the first repeating FRB arose from very particular and extreme conditions inside a very tiny galaxy. This discovery represented the first piece of the puzzle, but it also raised more questions than it solved, such as whether there was a fundamental difference between repeating and non-repeating FRBs. So what do you make of these mysterious signals? Many people across the world seem to be reporting strange things happening in our sky. Yesterday, I reported on the odd crater that was discovered in Nigeria. Two versions of the story were put forward to explain what was happening in the region. One was that a meteorite made contact with the ground, and the other stated the hole was caused by a truck that got into some trouble and went up in flames. Interestingly, shortly after I posted the video, I received some interesting photos. They're allegedly taken in Iceland, and shows what appears to be a large object with a massive trail behind it. At the moment, it's only been reported on a few channels, one being Mr. MBB 333. Various explanations have been put forward to try and explain the object, one being that it was created by some sort of aircraft, and the smoke you see behind it could be due to it running into some trouble. However, as some have pointed out, the smoke is really thick, and doesn't look like a typical trail an aircraft would leave behind. The next suggestion was that it could have come from space. NASA and the European Space Agency have reported several objects that have come close to our planet in the past 12 months. Interestingly, though, they only report about the ones we know about. NASA have been open about the fact that every so often an asteroid will approach us that we're not aware of. This happens because the asteroid detection machines don't always pick up on every celestial body, and this has made some suggest this is what's happening here. Others went down the route of suggesting that this object could be a UFO. There's not a country in the world that hasn't reported a UFO. They are seen across the globe. These unidentified flying objects come in various shapes and sizes, with the most common ones being the disc, triangle, cigar, and/or however, in some cases they have been reported to leave a trail behind them, as if they've gotten into some kind of trouble. One of the interesting things about this photograph is that it's really clear. This doesn't usually happen when it comes to things that's been spotted in our sky. Another thing that people have pointed out is that it looks like the smoke is ringed, with many saying they haven't seen anything like this before. Not much information can be found out about the object, as it's only been making the rounds for a few days. Most are of the opinion, though, that it came from space. NASA said the following on their website: "The Earth's atmosphere protects us from the multitude of small debris. These are the size of grains of sand or pebbles, and thousands of them pelt our planet every day. The meteors and our night sky are visible evidence of this small debris burning up in the atmosphere. In fact, up to a diameter of around 10 meters or 33 feet. Most stony meteoroids are destroyed in the atmosphere in thermal explosions. However, around 500 meteorites reach the surface every year." What do you make of this interesting object that was photographed above Iceland? NASA are constantly scanning the cosmos. It's due to satellites, telescopes, and a massive amount of patience that we're able to make these kinds of discoveries. NASA have just announced their recent discovery. This comes in the form of a new Earth-sized planet that has features similar to our own. One of the most notable things this planet has going for itself is being able to support water. As researchers have said in the past, finding a planet that has water on it is a great sign. And finding one that's in a habitable zone is even better. In fact, not many of these planets have been found. One of the most recent ones was that of K2-18b. NASA said the following on their website about this planet. K2-18b is a super-Earth exoplanet that orbits an M-type star. Its mass is 8.29 Earths. It takes 32.9 days to complete one orbit of a star, and is 0.14 astronomical units from its star. Its discovery was announced in 2015. However, this most recent planet has been called Kepler 1649c. Thomas Subergen, who is an associate administrator of NASA's science mission in Washington, said the following about this incredible discovery. "This intriguing, distant world gives us a greater hope that a second Earth lies among the stars, waiting to be found. The planet orbits a small dwarf star in the habitable zone. Researchers have said that this area is of high interest, and over the years they've managed to find several planets that need to be investigated more. The team of researchers noted this planet is around the same size as Earth. Due to receiving the same amount of light as our planet does, the researchers said it's one of the best contenders to support life. The team ran this planet through various tests, and what it showed them was out of thousands of exoplanets they discovered, This was the most similar to Earth in every way. It's an exciting discovery that shows us there's planets out there that are similar in size to Earth, while also being able to support the same climate. As of right now, though, researchers and scientists will carry out more tests. Andrew Vanderberg, who is a researcher at the University of Texas at Austin, said the following in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Out of all the mislabeled planets we recovered, this one's particularly exciting. Not just because it's in the habitable zone in Earthsides, but because of how it might interact with the neighboring planet. The more data we get, the more signs we see pointing to the notion that potentially Earthsides exoplanets are common around these kinds of stars. Another planet that's of interest is that of GJ357d. Again, scientists said this is another planet that could potentially host human life. NASA come forward and said that it's around 31 light-years away from our solar system. It orbits in the Goldilocks zone of the GJ357 system, where scientists have speculated that water could form. The reason it gets the name of super-Earth is because it's over 6 times the size of our planet. It's a distance from the star that is not too hot and not too cold. The planet was not expected to be there, so it's like a freebie, because it was discovered in the follow-up. I was on vacation at the time and was completely surprised. Although this is an incredible discovery, the planet is too far away. What it's told researchers, though, is that there could be other Earth-like planets out in the vastness of space. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries? NASA have taken a countless number of photographs. They show some of the most impressive sights the universe has to offer, and really puts into perspective how tiny and insignificant we are. In recent years, though, these photographs have been studied by amateur researchers, and every so often someone will come forward and claim that they found an anomaly that doesn't seem to fit in. This is the case for this photograph. It soon made the rounds on various websites and social media pages, which stated that the object could be extraterrestrial in nature. As stated on the official NASA website, 433 Eros was discovered on August 13 in 1898 by Gustav Wind, who was at the time director of the Uranian Observatory in Berlin, which discovery was the accidental byproduct of a 2-hour photographic exposure he conducted on a different asteroid. 185 unique along with unique, the image he produced showed a 0.4 mm image trail, and observations on the following evening identified the object as one of an unusually high apparent motion in the sky. The image that sparked debate is that of Eros. Researchers have said that they can see what appears to be a giant object on the asteroid itself, with some even claiming that the structure is that of a base. One individual claimed that NASA didn't even realize they captured the object, further saying that if they noticed it, they most likely wouldn't have released it. The photograph can be found on NASA's photojournal website. They placed the following statement next to the image. This image of Eros, taken from the Near-Shoemaker spacecraft on May 1, 2000, is among the first to be returned from low orbit. Between May and August, the spacecraft will orbit at altitudes near 50 kilometers or 31 miles or less. This will be the prime period of activity for some of the spacecraft's science instruments. The X-ray gamma-ray spectrometer will build up maps of chemical abundances, while the laser's rangefinder measures the shape of Eros to within meters. At the same time, the magnetometer will watch for indications of Eros magnetic fields, and the near-infrared spectrometer will map types of rocks. The imager will take pictures of the surface of Eros that capture features as small as 4 meters or 13 feet across. This particular image, taken from an orbital altitude of 53 kilometers or 33 miles, shows a scene around 1.8 kilometers or 1.1 miles across. NASA described the object as a boulder, further saying that various others can be seen. However, others said the object can be seen giving off a reflection and said that this is proof that it's artificial in nature. Others, however, aren't so sure and suggested that this photograph is the only evidence of the structure. One person said the following: "Why would an alien race travel to this asteroid and build a single structure? It wouldn't make sense and would seem like a lot of effort for nothing. Surely the most likely explanation is that it's just a strange-looking boulder." Others, however, are still convinced that the photograph shows something mysterious and that even NASA themselves can't explain it. So what do you make of this photo? And do you think it shows something artificial? NASA and various other space agencies have set their eyes on reaching the red planet within the next few years. However, there's some that believe we've already made it there. Some point to this photograph that does at first look similar to prints left by astronauts on the moon. It's recently resurfaced and is being used by some as proof that humans are currently on Mars. However, NASA said the following about the photograph on their website. The important thing to keep in mind when talking about Mars exploration is that we're already there. This footprint photo was captured by the Spirit rover of a track left by one of the wheels, and is a good reminder that our robot explorers are already taking first steps on the journey to Mars. Others are not so convinced and say that they think secret missions have been sent to the red planet. It's important to note that NASA and other space agencies have denied this. But some individuals have come forward in detail that they worked on secret missions, and one of these included going to Mars. One individual is that of Andrew Bayago. Andrew Bayago claims that he traveled back in time to meet with dead U.S. presidents and discussing how America can be better. Andrew said that he's been transported into the past and future. He said he was only a kid when he was chosen from a gathering of skilled youngsters, and those individuals were to take part in a program that would see them meet previous and future beings, some of which were said to be from Mars. Bayago said the United States government came up with Project Pegasus, which was a covert activity between the years of 1962 and 1972. The program prompted the effective improvement of various technologies, for example, teleportation, time travel, and holographic images. Bayago claims that Pegasus was managed by both the CIA and DARPA. He also testified that the program was used in contacting previous U.S. presidents. Also, he said that Pegasus transported him to Mars, where he had discussions with extraterrestrials. Bayago said his first adventure transported him to the state capital of New Mexico. After that, he traveled back to see Abraham Lincoln. He went to Washington during the Revolutionary War. He also saw Jesus one-on-one during his time on Earth, but what they discussed was not made known to the public. Moving away from time travel, Bayago claims he's done future trips too. Among the notable ones he's done was traveling to the year 2045, where he saw a structure made of emerald and a different type of steel. At this time, he said this type of steel doesn't exist, and that it's a new type that gets discovered in the near future. Apart from being a time traveler, Bayago is also a politician and has been trying to make his way into the White House. In the year 2016, during the political reigns, Bayago didn't make it past the primaries. However, he has future information that at some point before the year 2028, he will either be chosen president or the vice president. He says the information has been revealed to him. When asked why he missed the opportunity to register his name on the polling form in the 50 states of America, Bayago complained of finance. To do that, according to him, would cost him around $5 million, which he doesn't have. People are looking forward to seeing if Basiego's prophecy of becoming president or vice president of America will come to pass. So what do you make of this photograph and Andrew's claims? For hundreds of years, mysterious reports have been made about large humanoids. Individuals have come forward about their encounters, and in some cases they've even managed to photograph what they saw. These giant creatures have been given the name of Bigfoot, and they're easily one of the most researched and cited cryptids on the planet. However, even though they're witnessed by thousands of people yearly, scientists have said there's no such creatures. And what people are actually seeing is mundane things like everyday wildlife. These creatures usually follow a theme. They stand on two legs and are roughly 7 to 12 feet tall. They have the general appearance of that of a large ape-like creature. Sightings of this beast have persisted for eons, since the time of the Aborigines and their ancient mythological folklore. What's even more startling about these claims is that even in the modern day people are encountering these creatures. All over the globe there have been reports of them, from Tibet, America, and even Australia. There's no shortage of stories. Ancient myths credit these creatures as having run-ins with humans, and when this happens it doesn't usually end well. Some have even managed to record some of their mysterious calls. And when given to scientists they have said that humans are unable to make these kinds of noises. The Washington State Department of Transportation posted the following on Twitter. Sasquatch spotted. I'm not superstitious, just a little stitious. Have you noticed something strange on our Sherman Pass State Route 20 camera before? If you look closely by the tree on the left, there looks to be something. Might be Sasquatch. We'll leave that up to you. One person went on to say the following: "It's the story that it's a cardboard cutout that you guys put there because you were bored and wanted to generate some more social media presence." To which the Washington State Department of Transportation replied with the following: "It's not a cardboard cutout. I've never been up to the camera. There have been items put in front of the camera by locals in the area for 15 plus years. I just happened to notice this one the other day when I was going to give a road conditions update on the pass. Then this happened." They also said that it wasn't photoshopped. One person said the following: "Although this photo may turn out to be vague, I've seen various mysterious creatures in this region. I'm someone that spent over 20 years in the outdoors, and I've only encountered 4 of them. They are very elusive. They'll be gone before you can get close to them. This is why they're notoriously difficult to photograph. I've tried every single time I encountered one on a hike, and each time the photograph looks terrible. They move too fast and are usually too far away to be picked up in a detailed image. I have no doubt in my mind that these ancient creatures exist in small clusters around our planet. I think that soon we'll get proof. However, in all my experiences, they don't seem keen on humans and always try their best to keep a distance. Others, however, have said the image shows gaps in the trees and this is creating an illusion that something is there. So what do you guys make of this image? And do you think Bigfoot exists?" Microsoft founder Bill Gates has been one of the leading voices with what's happening in the world. He said that countries have to start working on a vaccine and that 7 billion people should be given this vaccine as soon as it's been created. Breakfast, he was asked how important it is that there's a global response, to which he replied the following: "Well, I'd say it's critical because the tools that are going to reduce deaths, the drugs, that's a global thing to get those out, and the thing that will get us back to the world before this event is the vaccine, and getting that out to 7 billion people. So the effort to test those and build factories to understand if it's safe and ready to go. That's a global problem, and I'm glad people are coming together to find where is the best work and combine that. This is the whole world working on probably the most urgent tool that's ever been needed." Bill was then asked to reflect on how the world leaders have responded to this crisis, in which he said the following: "There was a period when myself and other health experts were saying this was the greatest potential downfall the world faced. Going back quite a way, there was a speech that was done in 2015 in a New England medical journal about this thing. We all looked back and wished we invested more so that we could quickly have all the diagnostics, drugs, and vaccines. We underinvested. There was then the period when the virus showed up for a few months. What tests were prepared? Very few countries are going to get an A grade. And now here we are. We didn't simulate or practice this. So with both the health policies and health economic policies, we are finding ourselves in uncharted territory." In a video interview with the Financial Times, Mr. Gates said the following: "When you're talking about making it easier to not have infection coming back into your country, you can make both a humanitarian and self-interested argument that even a few % of gross domestic product will be a wise investment. So far, it's been announced that the United Kingdom has contributed over £250 million to help develop a vaccine. The Gates Foundation was one of the creators of TCP, which has been asking for large sums of money to create a vaccine. The company is a foundation that takes donations from various organizations, both public and private. This money is then used to try and create a vaccine against emerging infectious diseases." Bill also said there needs to be more cooperation from various countries. He said that sadly underdeveloped countries are being hit the most, as they don't have the necessary means to isolate themselves, further saying that their health systems is far less than in richer countries, so global cooperation needs to be met so they can help these countries. After that, they want to supercharge the amount of vaccines that will be given out, giving these to as many people as possible. It was also announced that the United States has given $500 million to Johnson & Johnson. This is in the hopes of finding a vaccine. So what do you guys make of what's going on at the moment? The subject of UFOs is a fascinating one. For hundreds of years now, these unidentified flying objects have been observed, but what's interesting is the amount of alleged crashes. Over the years, these crafts have allegedly made contact with the planet. Although each case is different, many of them follow a similar theme. It usually involves strange-looking aircraft crashing to the ground, and in some cases having the occupants laying around the crash site. Some of the most famous UFO crashes are that of Roswell and the Rendlesham Forest. On the 26th of December, 1980 at around 3 a.m., an eyewitness saw lights that were close to the Rendlesham Forest. At first, soldiers thought it was a crashed aircraft, but after they entered the forest to investigate, they saw a metallic glowing object that kept moving further away. The military personnel weren't able to catch up to the object. Interestingly, for years people have also come forward with stories of allegedly being taken on board these crafts. The eyewitnesses report that those controlling these crafts are not from Earth and have features that include 2 large black eyes, gray skin, and a large head. Although some of these cases are relatively known, there's one case that details a UFO colliding with the ground while having an abductee on board. The story goes back to 1971 in California. A local resident reported that she was scared by a really loud sound. Wanting to know what had caused the sound, she quickly ran outside, where many neighbors were also wondering what had caused the loud explosion. They could see a large amount of smoke coming from a few miles away. It's interesting to note that Edwards Air Force Base was nearby. However, one thing the residents picked up on was the mysterious glowing lights in the distance. The residents ventured to the site where the object had crashed. Here they observed a mushroom-shaped craft that was gray in color, having green flashing lights around it. The residents said the object was unlike anything they'd seen before. The material of the object was smooth, with no markings, doors, or windows. They remarked how it looked as though the craft had been created using one sheet of material. Things were about to get even more straw. They then noticed that small gray humanoids were laying on the ground. After observing them, their attention was then brought to a mysterious woman making her way through the debris. She was described as wearing a type of spacesuit. Before anything else could happen, military personnel from the nearby base were arriving at the site. The military told everyone that was in the area that they had to leave or they would be in serious trouble. The residents, along with everyone else, was unsurprisingly interested in what happened in the area. However, there was no information about it in the newspaper or on the local news. The event was covered up by the military and forgotten about. That was until UFO researcher Albert Rosales tracked down the mysterious woman. Her name was Lorraine Cordini. She did admit to being the woman at the crash site, but that she didn't remember much of the event. She eventually went under hypnosis and revealed the following. I was physically on board a mother's spaceship working. When it was time to return to Earth, 3 ETs, 1 female essence and 2 male essence were the crew. We were either shot down or crashed near Edwards Air Force Base in California. I remember standing in the wreckage, suddenly, in conscious memory, confused, disorientated, and filled with sorrow. This was as military personnel kicked the bodies of the 2 dead teens. I remember hearing in my mind the captain of the mothership saying how sorry she was, and that she couldn't help us in fear of being detected. The female crewman was standing to my left. I had on a pink bodysuit. I cried as the military cursed my dead comrades. I don't yet remember what the parts of the ship looked like. What you make of this incredible event? Various places on our planet remain unexplored. This ranges from various underwater crevices to the deep jungles scattered across our planet. Interestingly, NASA have been able to photograph pretty much every region on our planet, giving us a way of scanning Earth from the comfort of our home. However, a photograph taken back in 1968 would soon become the focus point of various groups. Although NASA and various other agencies have said this is completely untrue, some groups have put forward the idea that our Earth is in fact hollow. One of the reasons they say this is because of an old photograph that NASA captured. The picture in question was taken by the ESSA-7 satellite on the 23rd of November 1968. NASA said the following about the satellite on their website. ESSA-7 was a sun-synchronous operational meteorological satellite designed to take and record daytime Earth cloud pictures. This was on a global basis for subsequent playback to a ground acquisition facility. The spacecraft has essentially the same configuration as that of a television infrared observation satellite program satellite, i.e. an 18-sided right prism, 107 centimeters across opposite corners and 56 centimeters high, with a reinforced base plate carrying most of the subsystems and a cover assembly. Electric power was provided by approximately 10,000 solar cells that were mounted on the cover assembly. One of the photographs that was captured, though, did seem to show a strange anomaly. This came in the form of a massive hole located at the North Pole. What's interesting is that this photograph was taken by NASA themselves, which helps add credibility. There was 2 photographs taken during this Passover. Interestingly, one of them showed the region covered with clouds, or the other showed the arrow with no clouds, and it was this one that revealed the massive hole at the North Pole. All this did was give those that believe in the hollow Earth theory a bigger platform. One of the most interesting accounts in regards to the hollow Earth is that of Richard Byrd. Going back in 1947, Richard Byrd of the United States Navy would fly directly to the North Pole in a daring mission. Something that, at the time, confused many people. The inner Earth would suggest there was an opening that he was able to fly into, and that it must have been big enough for his plane. He not only said this, but also told of the incredible things he witnessed. He said that once inside the Earth, he was able to see some incredible things, some of which included mountain ranges, wildlife, waterfalls, and vegetation. The animals he witnessed, though, were different to our modern-day animals, saying they were much larger in size and looked prehistoric. It said that he was able to see a creature that closely resembled a mammoth and that it was hiding in the vegetation. While flying above this new world, he was able to find somewhere to land, after which he said he was greeted by flying machines. They then signaled him to follow them to another location. He described these machines as being more advanced than his plane and that piloting them were beings much. Once they reached the location, the beings said this land is called Akatha. After the long flights, the crew needed rest, and the beings were very happy to let them do this. However, as you can imagine, this story has received its fair share of criticism. Others have suggested the reason behind this hole is due to the stitching process. This has caused a number of anomalies to appear in space photographs over the years. So what do you make of this interesting photograph? The International Space Station is one of the most impressive man-made objects. Only a few have been able to call this place home. It's a staple that shows what humans can achieve when we work together. There's various International Space Station cameras that give the public a chance to look out into the cosmos. A question that many are asking at the moment, though, is what's going on with the International Space Station. Various cameras are picking up mysterious objects. A new video was taken by some Uncle Crystal. She managed to record strange objects coming into view on one of the cameras. She said the following about the video. Last night I took these videos of the live feed from the ISS. Everyone is saying they're satellites. They were visible last night. However, they are seen in a straight line with some distance between them. This is looking past the Earth, but you can see some weird flashes of light in the center of the screen. This is where I started recording. There's a huge cluster of objects that start to come down the screen in some kind of formation. I may not know exactly what this is, but I do know that I saw something life-changing. Another video that Crystal captured seems to show what she described was fireballs in space. Here's some of the videos. Interestingly, it's not just Crystal that captured these mysterious objects. Various people have been posting videos and images of these strange anomalies. In some cases, they can be seen moving at incredible speeds, while others show them holding a tight formation. As of right now, NASA have said these objects can be explained as processing anomalies, or in some cases, space debris. So what do you make of these interesting videos? Outside of mystery lies history, and it too can be just as scary. Charred experimentation, serial psychopaths, and a well-documented phantasm that lives on into the 21st century are all tales that many wish were fiction. However, these stories below did not come from the imagination of storytellers, but the accounts and records of history. You might not believe in Yetis or aliens, but you can believe in what you're about to hear next. So here are 3 scary historical events. Ivan Pavlov experiments on orphans. Ivan Pavlov, the eminent Russian psychologist, is first and foremost associated with his work on classical conditioning, which eventually came to be known as the Pavlovian response. His key findings were largely as a result of his experiments on dogs. He knew that in the presence of food, dogs would begin to salivate. What was of interest, however, was that the dogs then began to salivate in the who would usually feed them, as opposed to simply salivating on seeing their food. Pavlov looked to investigate this further. Before mealtimes, the dogs would hear a bell rung, referred to as the neutral stimulus, at which point they would be given their food, known as the unconditioned stimulus. After a few repetitions, the dogs would salivate in response to the bell, before they had seen any food. So, Pavlov concluded that the neutral stimulus, the ringing of the bell, after being repeatedly paired with an unconditioned stimulus, the food turned into a conditioned stimulus, producing the conditioned response, salivation, all by itself. It sounds perfectly sweet, and really not a bad experiment for the dogs themselves. Well, what most people don't realize is that Pavlov had the dogs surgically implanted with something that measured the saliva excreted, with this crude device embedded into their throats. But Pavlov's experimentation did not end with animals. Pavlov took his research onto human testing as well. Pavlov had discovered how the brain learns to see the new stimuli as particular signals and links various reflexes to it. This is how animals in the wild learn to hunt or escape being hunted. They learn to apply their reflexes to the new situations based on experiences they've had before. If this could be applied to animals, surely it could apply to humans also. Of course, measurements would still have to be taken, saliva rate quantified, and that would again involve the use of a surgical implant embedded into the throat. Unsurprisingly, there were not many willing volunteers. What early 1900s Russia did have, however, were plenty of orphans and an absence of child welfare laws. It has been suggested that children were purchased by Pavlov's researchers. At that point, the human experiments began. The child would be put under heavy anesthetic, at which point the implant would be fixed into the orphan's throat. When they awoke, they would be tied to a laboratory chair, with their hands bound so they would be unable to remove the device, and taped their mouths open. After that, the salivation was measured just like the dogs. A squeeze of pressure on the child's wrist, the neutral stimulus, was made, and a cookie, the unconditional stimulus, presented. The fitted drip tubes on their throats would measure their saliva. However, it was thought that despite the same research conditions, the emotional stress proved too great to provide any useful results from this child experimentation. The London monster Jack the Ripper has always gone down in legend as the infamous predator who stalked London streets, preying upon the vulnerable and feasting on the panic and terror left in his wake. Jack the Ripper was not the first of his kind, however. 100 years before Jack came the London monster. The London monster was the name given to a serial psychopath who similarly terrorized London in the late 18th century. The occurrences were many and widely reported, leading to a city and its inhabitants gripped by fear, outrage, and dread. For 2 years, the purported maniac terrorized the city, slicing and dicing his way through the streets and into London's collective psyche. The attacks themselves followed a pattern. The monster stalked his victims from afar, following them at a distance through the dark, damp city alleyways. When he got close, he would verbally harass and curse his would-be victims before striking them a dozen ways with knives and blades hidden about his person. They were homemade, shrewdly crafted for his methods of attack. Sometimes the victim would be stabbed in the hips or in their buttocks, or kicked with a blade attached to his boot, and even struck with knives fastened to his knee. On other occasions, a shrouded figure would offer a bouquet of flowers to a lady, inviting her to enjoy the scent of them first. Unfortunately, the only thing she would receive would be a stab to the face from a sharp spike hidden in what turned out to be fake flowers. The screams of his victims would sound out through the streets, but the monster would not run off immediately, coldly observing the results of yet another successful attack. Frenzy filled the streets and vigilante mobs gathered, attacking anyone they thought who looked to be a suspect. Women dared not walk the streets, and those who had to slipped copper pans under their petticoats to order a semblance of protection from this public menace. Finally, in the summer of 1790, the public caught their man. A gangly youth by the name of Renwick Williams was recognized and identified by a previous victim of the monster. He happened to work in an artificial flower factory nearby and was also identified by a second witness despite her previous description not bearing any resemblance to him. The third witness stated he was definitely not the man who had attacked her, but the newspapers had spoken and the mob was out for blood. 2 trials took place, both extraordinarily long, taking up a lot of time and a lot of inches in the press. A clear alibi provided by workmates and questions over his likeness to the London monster himself was not enough to get him off, and Williams was found guilty and locked up. Whether the monster himself was found remains unsolved. But it's clear the London monster roamed the streets, a demon of the anyways. The Woman in Black, 1882. The family of Captain Frederick William Despard. For almost 100 years, a house in the English countryside was the site of a ghostly apparition that would be one of the foremost pseudoscientific reports of the supernatural ever seen in history. In 1885, Frederick W. H. Myers of the Society for Physical Research was asked to investigate the various goings-on in the house of Captain Frederick William Despard, and a specter supposedly being seen by his family. Mr. Myers took the investigation on and began with the history of the house. The house's original owners seemed to have suffered a sorrowful past. It began with the owner himself, Henry Swinhoe, who, in 1860, originally had the house built for him and his wife, a woman he deeply loved. She passed away young and before her time, and Swinhoe mourned their premature departure. Some years later, he remarried, except this time the relationship would not be so sweet. Swinhoe and his second wife Imogen argued constantly, and both drank to excess in their contempt for one another. Imogen was also desperate for the valuable jewelry collection of Swinhoe's previous wife. She was never to find it, however, for he had hidden it away buried beneath the floorboards. Swinhoe would die before his second wife, but Imogen, living her remaining years dressed, would never find those jewels. The house subsequently passed on to new ownership and new occupants who began to witness various strange and supernatural occurrences. But it wouldn't be until the family of Frederick William Despard were to move in that these spiritual sightings would become prolific enough for them to engage the services of Frederick W. H. Myers. Rose, the oldest of Captain Despard's daughters, imparted to Mr. Myers what not only herself but her siblings and her parents had seen. The figure was that of a tall lady dressed in black of a soft woolen material, judging from the slight sound in moving. The face was hidden in a handkerchief held in the right hand. Her left hand was nearly hidden by her sleeve and a fold of her dress. As she held it down, a portion of a widow's cuff was visible on both wrists, so that the whole impression was that of a lady in widow's weeds. This figure was not just seen by the family but dozens of other visitors. She would be seen passing down the stairs, pausing at the living room, and then moving down the hall to the door to the garden where she would disappear. The phantom appeared to be aware of her surroundings and knew the house well, moving around the furniture and being familiar with the house's layout. But she never acknowledged anyone's attempt to communicate with her, gazing at them silently, a cold expression never leaving her. Everyone in the house saw the figure, including the family's dogs, who often howled or shrank in fear when they sensed her presence. After her sightings, the house would moan and creak as if tried to rid itself of the uninvited visitor. Knowing the house's troubled history, Myers found a photo of Swinhoe's second wife Imogen and showed it to the Despards. They confirmed that this indeed was the same figure who haunted their daily lives and would continue to do so not only for them but future occupants well into the 20th century. What do you make of these historical accounts? Even today, with the skies filled with drones, helicopters and planes, UFOs are still a source of mystery and intrigue. Imagine then the level of disbelief on seeing such objects before the actual invention of the airplane. Whilst we might think of the UFO as a 20th century phenomenon, the late 19th century saw many astounding reports that brought to those who witnessed them both wonderment and fear in equal measure. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious UFO encounters before the invention of the Arab. Mystery airships 1896 to 1897, almost a decade before the Wright brothers' first flight, numerous sightings of strange, cigar-shaped UFOs were spotted across the United States. Starting in 1896 and continuing to 1897, these mystery airships were bigger and faster than anything else known at that time. The first sighting was reported in the winter of 1896. A light was seen slowly moving through the Sacramento night sky on November 17th, with otherworldly sounds being heard as it passed overhead. The mystery light reappeared on the evening of November 21st, and then subsequently seen over more than half a dozen cities, including San Francisco and Oakland, and viewed by hundreds of witnesses. Not long after, more unidentified airships would be seen. On the outskirts of Springfield, Missouri, one was seen having crash-landed to the ground. It was 20 feet in length, 8 feet in diameter, and propelled by 3 giant propellers. An on-the-spot witness approached the ship and came across its 2 pilots. They looked human. However, their language was nothing of this world. They attempted with difficulty to communicate, trying to ascertain the pilot's origins. Eventually, they both pointed upwards and apparently uttered something that sounded like the word Mars before quickly returning to their airship and launching high into the sky, leaving witnesses completely mystified below. These unidentified objects would also be the first reported stories of alien abduction. The first occurred in April 1897 and involved another mystery airship hovering over a farmer's cattle pen. Upon closer examination, onlookers realized that a cable from the airship had roped up a cow, but was struggling to break free, having become entangled in the pen's fence. The group unsuccessfully tried to free the cow, but the fence itself was torn out of the ground, leaving the ship, cow, and part of the fence all rising slowly into the air and sail off into the sky. Interestingly enough, the airships weren't just after livestock, they tried to take people as well. It was on November 19, 1896, 2 days after the first mystery airship sighting over Sacramento. A U.S. Colonel H.G. Shaw was driving his buggy through the countryside near Stockton when he came across what appeared to be a landed airship. Shaw described it as having pointed ends and a silver exterior without any features aside from a rudder for steering. The ship was about 150 feet end to end, 25 foot in diameter. Suddenly, to Colonel Shaw's amazement, 3 slender, 7-foot-tall extraterrestrials exited the craft, all emitting a strange warbling noise. The beings reportedly examined Shaw's buggy before attending to Shaw himself, deciding to physically force him into their craft. Luckily, the stocky, well-built soldier was physically superior to the thin, lanky beings, and the aliens soon gave up, fleeing back to their ship and quickly speeding out of sight, leaving Colonel Shaw baffled below. Aurora, Texas UFO incident. It was almost dawn on April 17, 1897. When inhabitants of a rural American town saw a single alien spacecraft lose control over the skies of Texas. A young boy saw an airship trailing smoke as it headed north toward the town of Aurora, slowing and speeding as it tried to regain control over its trajectory. It sailed over the public square, reaching the northern part of the town, where it clipped the edge of a windmill at speed, then veering into the path of the town's water tower where, upon contact, blew into a number of pieces, large and small, in a terrific explosion, scattering debris over several acres of ground and awakening many of the town's residents. The residents that awoke went to investigate the source of their early wake-up call. What they found would astound and stupefy the townspeople. Having read about numerous mystery airships in national newspapers recently, including an abduction attempt, they wondered if this was something not only extraterrestrial but also nefarious in nature. On locating the ship's sole occupant, although the pilot was dead and disfigured from the crash, they soon realized that he was clearly not an inhabitant of this world. Furthermore, strange markings in the manner of hieroglyphic characters were seen on the internal control panel. Terrified of the unknown, the townspeople hurriedly buried the body in the local cemetery, and removing the wreckage in the hope that the incident would disappear from the town's history. But that would not be the end of this. Some decades later, an investigative reporter wanted to find out once and for all the facts behind this extraterrestrial cover-up. The investigator began with trying to locate the remains of the spacecraft itself. One Aurora resident interviewed claimed the whole thing was a fabrication, maintaining there had never been a windmill for the craft to collide with in that town. It turns out there was no windmill to be seen. However, further investigations revealed the remains of a windmill base were found. Was this Aurora resident still continuing the cover-up all these years after? More was added to the mystery as the nearby site of the old windmill was a deep well. A sweep of the well would reveal metals in the water itself, some elements such as aluminium and silver, but others that were unidentifiable in this planet's periodic table. Could this water well be where the spacecraft's parts had been dumped back in 1897? The presence of metals surprised the well's owner. However, he disclosed that having started using the well, He began to feel pains in his joints and soon diagnosed with early-onset arthritis that could be associated with contaminated water. With the location of the spacecraft possibly found, the investigator moved to locate the extraterrestrial pilot. He went to the Aurora Cemetery and ground-penetrating radar and photos from prior visits brought to light an unmarked grave in an area near other burials from the 1890s. He discovered a grave marker and headstone that seemed to show a spacecraft of some sort, as well as faint readings from his metal detector again. This was surely the conclusive evidence he was looking for. After putting the pieces together, the investigator returned to the town, looking to ask for permission to perform an exhumation and to conduct a more major operation of retrieving the spacecraft's pieces from the well. Not only did the Cemetery Association refuse his request, but upon returning to the site to take photos, not only had the grave marker mysteriously disappeared, but the metal readings now showed nothing. Returning to the well, the investigator had a feeling he knew what he'd find. The metal detector now also didn't pick up anything either. The UFO landing in Aurora, Jose Bonilla observation on the 12th and 13th of August 1883. An astronomer at a small observatory in Mexico made an extraordinary observation. While observing sunspots activity, Jose Bonilla saw around a legion of objects, each surrounded by a vapor passing across the face of the sun. He was able to take a few photographs, exposing the photographic plate at around 1/100th of a second, a particularly fast shutter speed for something so far away. These would come to be the earliest photos of an unidentified flying object. There were many suggestions on what these flying objects could be. Bonilla himself never actually put forward his own explanation, and a few years later the journal in which Bonilla's photos were published, something far more straightforward was suggested. This included things like migrating animals or even insects. Others have gone on to suggest that the objects were extraterrestrial in nature, and in their shapes, flight approach and numbers could well have been an army of alien craft. What scientists eventually came to surmise, however, was something far more terrifying, an extinction event in totality for all life on this planet. Scientists estimate that the objects ranged in size from 50 to 800 meters and were breakaways from a large parent meteor. That parent comet was around the same size as Halley's Comet, weighing well over 1 billion tons. Not only that, but the objects were around 600 kilometers to 8,000 kilometers away from colliding with Earth. In astronomical terms, this is equivalent to a bullet grazing your head so close it shaves off some of your hair. So if a collision had occurred, what would have been the result for us? Vanilla observed these objects for about 3.5 hours over 2 days. Was an average of 131 objects per hour and a total of 3,275 objects in the time between observations. So if they had collided with Earth, we would have had 3,275 Tunguska events in 2 days. The Tunguska event refers to a huge explosion caused by a meteoroid impact in northern Russia. It flattened an estimated 80 million trees over 830 square miles, with its power around 3 times of the Hiroshima nuclear bomb. Clearly one of those impact events is bad enough, but over 3,000 all within a couple of days. That is one visit from outer space that planet Earth is happy to have missed. But what do you make of these interesting accounts? UFOs have been a topic of interest for years now. The term stands for unidentified flying objects. Over the years, thousands of people have come forward with photographs and videos of these mysterious objects. However, it's important to understand that a UFO is simply an object that cannot be identified at that moment in time. Some of the most interesting reports come from those people that spend the majority of their time in the sky. Tic Tac UFO. The Tic Tac UFOs, given their name due to their rounded shape and white color, were first spotted by radar operator Kevin Day on the USS Princeton. He described seeing objects in groups of between 5 and 10 slowly flying at an elevation of 28,000 feet. Day's initial reaction was that the objects held missile characteristics. Others, however, were less accepting of the shapes. The majority on board the ship assumed that the brand new radar system must be malfunctioning. But when it was restarted and recalibrated, the shapes Day had reported came back clearer and sharper. What happened next was very interesting. According to multiple sailors, a helicopter landed on the ship and agents emerged and gathered all the information relating to the tic-tac shapes. By the time the helicopter had flown away, There was no longer any evidence of the UFOs on board. Then, on the 14th of November on the USS Nimitz, Commander David Fravor and Chad Underwood spotted an object strikingly similar to the ones they had seen. Fravor described how the tic-tac UFO dove below the water resurfaced and sped out of sight when he approached. Underwood was tasked with capturing video footage for intelligence to analyze, so did not have a great deal of time to see the object with his own eyes, but he does recall seeing a blip on his radar. In the midst of a clear blue sky, Underwood also recalls that this blip was not behaving within the normal laws of physics. Instead, the object was impossibly and erratically veering from 50,000 feet to 100 feet in seconds. Part of the infrared video footage that Underwood recorded of the tic-tac UFO is known as the 2004 USS Nimitz Fleur 1 video. It was recorded in 2004, but took 13 years to be released to the public by the New York Times. Reportedly, the footage was released by whistleblower and former intelligence officer Luis Elizondo. This was to shed light on secretive Department of Defense operations regarding UFO sightings. The grainy black and white videos seems to challenge logic and defy reality. However, its authenticity was confirmed by the Pentagon. The fact that the government has refused to release the whole footage has led many to suspect this is a genuine sighting of a UFO. Notably, all the men who saw the tic-tac UFO are trustworthy sources. They are all highly esteemed in their fields and none are UFO fanatics. In fact, Underwood delayed coming forward with his observations for years due to a fear of having his name attached to the little green men crazes that are out there. That being said, the tic-tac UFO sightings have been widely criticized. Many have proposed what Underwood and others observed was an aircraft, a weather balloon, or a flock of birds. Notably, Underwood strongly argues against this. He says there was no way the object he saw could have been a man-made aircraft. As if it were, it would have had to emit a heat plume, which it did not. He goes on to argue that the shapes could not have been birds as they were traveling far too high and too slowly, without any established path. And no aircraft, bird, or a weather balloon could physically behave as erratically as the shape Underwood spotted. Others have argued that the strange sightings were a result of faulty equipment. They say that the USS Princeton equipment and Underwood's infrared camera must have had glitches. For the latter, some argue that the object might have appeared to veer dramatically to Underwood because of the way he was maneuvering the aircraft. However, as previously mentioned, the equipment on the USS Princeton had already been shut down and restarted to check for bugs. Whether you choose to believe the footage is evidence of extraterrestrial behavior or a human or mechanical error, the tic-tac UFO mystery remains unsolved. Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident. The Japan Airlines Flight 1628 was flying from Paris to Tokyo when 3 strange objects were spotted. The sighting lasted 50 minutes in total and have been argued by many to be evidence of extraterrestrial activity. The crew first witnessed an irregularity when flying over eastern Alaska. To their left, they reported seeing 2 unidentified objects rising and escorting their aircraft. The objects were both square-shaped and cylindrical with a glow so strong it lit the whole cabin up. A warmth was also experienced that carried through the walls of the plane. Captain Tarachi was alarmed and immediately made a series of panicked calls to the Air Traffic Control Center to see if there were any other aircrafts in the area. He was told that none were showing up on the radar. No sooner had Tarachi heard this, he observed the 2 unidentified objects darting and moving around in a very erratic manner. It was also noted that a much larger craft loomed into view behind them. This larger craft was described by Tarachi as a mothership and twice the size of any aircraft. What's more, it was moving in a way that defied gravity. Tarachi would later report how it sped up, then stopped, then flew at our speed, in our direction so that to us it appeared to be standing still. The next instant it changed course. In other words, the flying object had overcome gravity. Donald D. Engen, Vice Admiral of the FAA, gathered together representatives of the FBI and CIA and showed a recording of the events. Reportedly, after the video had played, he told the room that the incident was a secret and if asked, the meeting never took place. It was only when John Callahan, the FAA division chief of the accidents, and launched an investigation that the incident properly came to light. Callahan accused the members of this secret meeting of confiscating and hiding the data from the event. The remaining evidence that could be gathered led the FAA to conclude that the sightings reported on the Japan Airlines Flight 1628 were a result of technical difficulties and a split radar image. Subsequently, Tarachi was discredited despite his extensive experience as merely a UFO fanatic. He was accused of having logged several other sightings during his time with the airline and therefore accused of being a biased observer. It was even suggested that Tarachi and his crew had simply become disorientated and made the silly mistake of misidentifying Mars or Venus. What doesn't make sense, and to some might even be seen as suspicious, was the treatment of Tarachi. When Tarachi gave an interview to two journalists about the events he had witnessed, the reaction of the authorities was to immediately demote him to a desk job and out of the limelight. For some, this fierce reaction to quieten Tarachi is evidence of a cover-up. The events that day on board Japan Airlines Flight 1628 were far more sinister than a mere technical error. It's bizarre why individuals are treated this way. If anything, it only helps the case of the eyewitnesses. As many have pointed out, it's an insult to those who have studied and worked so hard to become a pilot, to then have your name tarnished when you're being honest and telling the truth on what you saw. 2007 Alderney UFO sighting. In 2007, two experienced airline pilots on separate flights reported seeing the same mysterious object hovering off the coast of Alderney. Captain Ray Boyer was flying a plane of 5 passengers from Southampton to Alderney when he noticed a bright light ahead of him. At first, he assumed the light was from a reflection of the sun, but when the light remained completely stationary, he began to grow cautious. Taking out a pair of binoculars to observe the light in more detail, he saw it was cigar-shaped with a green area, pointed ends, and was emitting light downward. Boyer would later state in his 9 years of flying, he had never seen anything like it. Even more strangely, behind this light, Boyer saw a second, identical light. Conscious of the safety of his passengers, Boyer continued with the flight. After landing, Boyer asked the passengers if any of them had seen anything unusual, and a number of them reported spotting the same stationary and luminous light in the sky. Some were so convinced by what they had seen they agreed to submit a report to go public with their sighting. When Boyer relayed what he had seen to air traffic control, he was told a similar report had come in from Blue Island pilot Captain Patterson. Patterson's flight had been further away from the light than Boyer's, but he too had reported a yellow and beige light that posited some type of atmospheric phenomenon. The sightings did not end there, though. BBC Radio Guernsey reported that a couple had been on a walk that afternoon and returned to their hotel, inquiring about the 2 bright yellow lights in the sky above Alderney. Even more concrete proof came when it was shown that Jersey's airport's primary low-level radar had registered the presence of 2 objects in the area. Boyer and Patterson were both convinced they had seen UFOs. Skeptics have argued against them and instead proposed the 2 lights were either a military aircraft, a sundog, or Earth lights. Firstly, for some the description of the 2 lights could have been secret military aircrafts in the local airspace. The presence of such aircrafts would be extremely dangerous and illegal, and notably the Ministry of Defense and French military both issued statements to say they had no part to play in any potential military exercise. Secondly, astronomers have put forward the theory that the 2 lights were caused by sundog effects. Sundogs usually appear close to the sun and tend to be colored. While the description of the sundogs fits the profile of the lights Boyer and Patterson spotted, what is problematic is that the 2 lights were reported at an altitude of around 2,000 feet, much further below the sun than sundogs would be. The third and final theory put forward was that the lights were the result of Earth lights. Sunlight reflected from the Earth's surface. Earth lights appear as luminous and colored objects, but once again, while they fit the profile of Boyer and Patterson's sighting, their location does not. Earth lights do not occur over water, and the lights Boyer and Patterson reported manifested themselves above the sea. But what do you make of these interesting stories? It's a normal day of the week and a loved one goes for a walk, something they've done hundreds of times before, and nothing is out of the ordinary. Until they don't come back. You wait a couple of hours. Perhaps they've taken a detour, a new route. The sun begins to set and you start looking at your watch, worried. The hours pass and you call the police. A routine walk has turned into a manhunt. Searches find nothing. Days, months, and years pass. Hope fades. You grieve, and you move on with your life. Until they reappear, Just as quickly as they walked out that door in your life, they come right back into it. And that's not all, they have no idea where they've been all that time. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious people who vanished only to reappear. Stephen Kabatsky. It's the winter of 1978 in the American Midwest, and Stephen Kabatsky, a student from Hope College, is taking advantage of the last days of February before spring began to go skiing. He leaves his student digs to go on a solo cross-country skiing trip. Kabatsky was an accomplished outdoorsman who climbed mountains in Europe and was an avid cross-country skier. Familiar with the area, this was an ordinary weekend pursuit for Kabatsky and to those at college who knew him. However, this small excursion would end up being far from ordinary. Several days later, the alarm was raised when Kubak failed to return from what should have been a day's activity. At the same time, snowmobilers on the southeastern shore of Lake Michigan had come across a set of abandoned skis and ski poles. The police knew immediately who they belonged to. A search party was sent out, utilizing both land and air rescue with helicopters and locals deployed. To find Stephen, only 2 more things were subsequently discovered: Stephen's backpack and his footprints in the deep frozen snow. There was something off about the scene, however. The backpack looked as if it had been abruptly thrown to the ground, and the heavy footprints disappeared into nothingness as if Kabatsky had walked out of reality. Looking to close off the case with a sense of logic, police figured a more rational explanation. Close to the shores of frozen Lake Michigan, Stephen must have removed his skis and wandered too close to the water, falling through the ice and drowning into the watery depths below. His friends grieved. His family mourned, and life returned to normal as the months passed by. That is until 15 months later, Stephen Kabatsky walked straight through the door of his family house over 500 miles away. Stephen told his recollection of events as best he could. That day, May 5, 1979, he woke up on a grassy knoll in Massachusetts, some 700 miles due east from where he disappeared. He was wearing clothes that were not his, had items such as maps and signs that were neither his nor written by him, and he had no concept of the amount of time that had passed. It was only when he was able to purchase a newspaper he would realize that he had reemerged to consciousness 15 months later than when he first set off. The last thing he remembered before this was striding forwards on his skis as he made his way around Lake Michigan. Before he knew it, however, he experienced a momentary blip, being enveloped in a cold and frozen darkness that hurried him from one point to another, which felt like he was running. Aside from this, he had no other details to give, and yet the mystery of what happened that day in February 1978 was perhaps less about Kabatsky and more about where he was. Urban myths run rife that Lake Michigan is home to cross-dimensional disappearances, essentially the Bermuda Triangle of the Great Lakes. It's not just Kabatsky who went missing in this area. Ships, planes, and other people have all disappeared, and for whom there was never any trace of again. As of today, Kabatsky's disappearance and reappearance remains a mystery. William Bates. Back in 1902 in New York, a well-known doctor by the name of William Bates sends a messenger to deliver a note to his wife. "My dear wife," it says, "I am called out of town to some major operations. I go with Dr. Forsch, an old student, to do a mastoid, some cataracts, and other operations. He promises me a bonanza. Too bad to miss the horse show, but I am glad to get so much money for us all. I am in such a flurry. Do not worry. I will write details later. Yours lovingly, Willie." It was not out of the ordinary for the doctor to be called away on spontaneous moments like this, but his wife, Ada Seaman Bates, found something in the note puzzling. Dr. Bates was already particularly successful as one of the foremost optometrists in the city. They were already very well off, and the doctor was also not one to talk about money like this. However, Ada set this to the back of her mind and thought nothing more of it. That is until several days had passed and the good doctor had still not returned home. His disappearance prompted a search not only by the local police precinct in New York City, but a wider net cast internationally by the Freemasons, the elusive organization that William Bates himself was a member of. Months passed and no news came Ada's way, up until a letter arrived at her door. News from the chapter of Freemasons based across the Atlantic 3,500 miles away in London. A character resembling Dr. Bates had been located in a London hospital, But he was not living his day-to-day as a senior optometrist. He was merely a medical assistant. The mystery only deepened when it was revealed he first came to the hospital not as a doctor but as a patient. When he first arrived, he was so emaciated he could barely stand, looking haggard and thin, his eyes deeply sunken. This for a man whose sizable bank account should have ensured a life of luxury wherever he traveled to. Ada made the journey to England at once, but this was not to be a happy reunion. Ada Bates' joy upon seeing her husband again was short-lived. She was met with a blank stare from her long-lost husband. "I don't know why you bother, madam," he said. "We are strangers." But she was not one to let their long-standing marriage disappear like her husband had. He was persuaded by her, albeit begrudgingly, to move in with her to the Savoy Hotel where they might rekindle their relationship anew. Her efforts wouldn't pay off, as a day later, William Bates snuck out of their room, never to be seen by her again. Ada never stopped searching, sending private investigators throughout Europe and the eastern seaboard, but all in vain. She died clutching a photo of him, heavy-hearted and in anguish. But Dr. Bates' story would not end there. 8 years later, an acquaintance visiting Grand Forks, a small town of 12,000, stumbled upon a man who cast a great similarity to William. Again, there followed a clear lack of memories of his previous life. It was as if he had a chunk of his mind removed, like a slice of watermelon chopped away and eaten by an invisible monster. Wrote the associate. Was this tale an episode of amnesia? Or perhaps the aimless wandering a man looking to find something more than money in his life, but only ended up losing himself? Whatever the case, William Bates passed away in 1931, leaving this disappearing act a mystery forever. Linda Ortega. The irony in Linda Ortega's case was clear to everyone when the news of her disappearance reached major media organizations in September of 2012. Linda had gone for a walk with her brother in their local woods in the Ozarks, a mountain range just north of Arkansas, with this afternoon activity in the aid of learning survival techniques. Her brother, Eddie, was an expert in this area, but his sister Linda not so much. There was a lot of concern when Linda became separated from her brother. Walking through the forest, the pair entered a part of it that Eddie suddenly found unfamiliar, despite dozens of excursions there. With Linda beside him, he looked up through the trees hoping to find some degree of positioning from the mountains around them. When he looked beside him again, Linda was gone. A search party was sent into the forest to find her, but with winter temperatures beginning to set in and having left with barely any supplies at all, hope was fading fast for the inexperienced 53-year-old lost alone in the forest. She was to reemerge almost a week later, dazed and confused, but saying how glad she was that the forest had released her. This disorientation did not go unnoticed, and the chief deputy of the local region, Dwayne Pierce, said when she came out of the woods she wasn't quite about her head. Linda had managed to use some of the tips her brother had imparted to her before they got separated, surviving on berries, but sleeping on the cold frozen ground as she wandered through the maze of towering trees. But she maintained she was not alone through this ordeal. Dark figures in their forest appeared at dusk, silhouettes that moved through the trees. But no matter how much she screamed, they couldn't hear her. They constantly watched. Needless to say, she was relieved to step out of that forest alive. But what do you make of these mysterious disappearances and reappearances?